Bienvenidos and welcome to this year's 16th annual J. Paul Taylor Social Justice Symposium. My name is Cynthia Bejarano, and I'm a Regents Professor in the Interdisciplinary Studies and Gender and Sexuality Studies Department and Principal Investigator of the College Assistance Migrant Program. I'm also co-chairing this symposium with my dear colleague, Marta Estrada.
Thank you, Cynthia, and good evening, everyone. My name is Marta Estrada, and I serve as Director of New Mexico State University's College Assistance Migrant Program, also known as CAMP. This year's symposium theme, Justice for Farm Workers, is taking place during National Farm Worker Awareness Week. This year's symposium centers on questions of social justice pertaining to essential farm workers in our border region, as they continue to sustain our communities with their labor. Tonight, we will share a blessing ceremony from Tortugas Pueblo, welcome remarks from New Mexico State University Chancellor Dan Arvizu, a welcome video from the Honorable J. Paul Taylor, who the symposium is named after, a recognition of the New Mexico State University's Government Department Award, and the J. Paul Taylor Social Justice Symposium Social Justice Community Award recipients. And we will end with a keynote from New Mexico Attorney General Héctor Valderas.
We would like to begin this evening with offering a land acknowledgement statement before starting our symposium. As members of the NMSU community, we wish to acknowledge the indigenous peoples that lived in southern New Mexico for generations before our institution was established. As a public university dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion, it is important to recognize that we reside on the unceded lands of the Mescalero Apache, Chiricahua Apache, Tortugas Pueblo, and the Piro, Manso, and Tiwa people and surrounding indigenous communities. We have a special responsibility to acknowledge your history and remember our obligations to you as we live on your original homelands. Additionally, as a land-grant university with extension agencies across the state, we acknowledge the pueblos of northern New Mexico, the Navajo Nation, and the Genizaros. We pledge to have a meaningful and respectful relationship with the sovereign Indian nations, indigenous communities, and Native American peoples within our institution. We would also like to recognize the Native farm workers from across New Mexico and indigenous Mexican and Central American farm workers and other migrant peoples that labor in the fields across New Mexico, the borderlands, and the US.
As we begin Farm Worker Awareness Week in the United States, we would like to emphasize throughout the symposium that farm workers have always been essential workers. Everyone in this nation depends on farm workers for their food, and we are indebted to them for their hard work, their sacrifice, and their resilience. Nationally, according to the Washington, D.C. based organization Farm Worker Justice, there are between 2.5 to 3 million farm workers across the US. The majority of farm workers are immigrants. 29% are US citizens, 21% are legal permanent residents, while 49% lack authorized immigration status. This does not include H-2A workers. The average level of formal education completed by farm workers is the 7th grade due to family obligations and the lack of resources. Nationally, at least 33% of farm working families earned annual incomes of roughly $20,000 to $24,000, placing them below the poverty line. Most farm workers do not receive commonplace benefits such as sick leave, paid vacation, or health insurance. According to the US Department of Agriculture, there are approximately 20,000 farm workers in the state of New Mexico. The New Mexico Agricultural Statistics Bulletin valued the state's total agriculture production at over $3 billion just in 2019. Agriculture is an important economic engine in New Mexico, specifically with the sale of chile, pecans, and milk, yet farm workers often struggle to make ends meet.
So over these next several evenings, our panelists will discuss a variety of topics concerning farm workers and their labor, beginning with historical issues regarding the Bracero program that ran from 1942 to 1964 and the farm worker movement led by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. In spite of these efforts, quality of life issues for farm workers are still challenging today. The complexity of who farm workers are will be discussed this week, as well as their legal concerns and vulnerabilities, which we hope might be addressed through the recent Farm Workforce Modernization Act, a bipartisan immigration legislation that would provide undocumented farm workers and their family members with a pathway to legal immigration status and citizenship, and other relevant legislation that groups like the legendary United Farm Workers, the UFW Foundation, and Farm Worker Justice fought for, including agribusiness representatives. Farm work remains one of the most challenging and physically demanding and hazardous occupations in the nation. Farm workers continue to labor daily in order to sustain us with their harvest, while they themselves struggle to put food on their own tables and to access quality healthcare and education. These issues will be discussed at length throughout this week. We hope you can join us for each evening of our symposium. We would like to also invite you to participate in our Honoring Farm Workers Butterfly Project, sponsored by the NMSU Camp Student Council and J. Paul Taylor Academy, that we will describe at the end of this evening. I wanted to share at least one butterfly with you now from third grader Kyra Luna, who made this butterfly and wrote a message to a farm worker stating, "Thank you for working so hard to keep everyone alive."
The symposium is possible thanks to the following sponsors: New Mexico State University's offices of the Chancellor, the President, and the Provost, the Honors College, the College of Arts and Sciences, the Department of Journalism and Media Studies, the Interdisciplinary Studies and Gender and Sexuality Studies, the Government Department, the NMSU College Assistance Migrant Program, and the Camp Student Council, the College of Arts and Sciences Fulton Endowed Chair, Doña Ana Community College, and our non-university sponsors, the J. Paul Taylor Academy and the Guadalupe Institute.
We would also like to give a special thanks to the following individuals. Without their labor, the symposium would not have been possible. I want to thank my co-chair, Martha Estrada, and the rest of our J. Paul Taylor Social Justice Symposium Committee and camp staff, Ricardo Trejo, Cynthia Barto, Zaira Martin, Zelong Jiang, Yvette Cortez, Joshua Vanderhuff, Mariela Munoz, and Edric Castro, the College of Arts and Sciences Business Manager, Lucille Casas, Accountant Kelly Workman, and Academic Program Coordinator, Ashley Jurado, Journalism and Media Studies College Assistant Professor, Hugo Perez, ICT Systems Analyst, Frank Sage, who's operating the entire webinar, go Frank, and freelance photographer, Paul Ratchie, interpreters, Annabelle Vela and Alex Araiza, Tortugas Pueblo, and the Las Cruces Brannigan Library.
Thank you to everyone. Now, moving on, we've all suffered many losses this year, and some more than others. This year's symposium is dedicated to the memory of 3 members of our farm worker community, 2 of which were scheduled to be a part of this symposium. Tonight, we would like to honor them. Mr. Francisco Ubiña was a former bracero. His son, Francisco Ubiña Jr., will be taking his place on Monday's panel. El señor José Garcia, a farm worker from Vado, New Mexico, will have 2 of his daughters share his story during Thursday's panel. and Dr. Stephen Lane, an esteemed colleague and farm worker advocate who would have served on Wednesday's education panel. His wife, Dr. Georgia Lane, will serve in his place. We ask that you think of them and so many others who have given of themselves so selflessly to serve the farm worker community.
Thank you, Martha. We thank them and honor them. As a longtime neighbor and friend of J. Paul Taylor and New Mexico State University, Tortugas Pueblo has, over several years, offered a blessing before each symposium. We are grateful for the following blessing that recently took place from the top of Tortugas Mountain.
We're honored with doing this for John Paul Taylor's. We've been there. We've been asked for the blessings, and we initially start them every year. So we're honored. We feel blessed because we're neighbors and we're about community, and we want the community to understand who we are and that we're here. So that's why we feel honored with NMSU helping us. Hey 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 ya hey ya hey ya 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 hey ya hey
We just want to thank you so much for your cooperation, your trust in us, and joining us and accompanying us in this social justice symposium for several years now. I think I can speak for Mr. Taylor that we appreciate you, we respect you, and we also honor you and you as a neighbor and the original descendants of this region of Tortugas Mountain.
We give thanks for everything that will nourish us today.
En nombre del Padre, del Hijo, del Espíritu Santo, amén. Please face to the right. I'd like to thank New Mexico State University and John Paul Taylor for inviting us to do this blessing. It's been an honor. Mother Earth is very special to us, and it was important for us to be up here on our mountain to show our respect to our Blessed Mother and to our neighbors and our friends, New Mexico State University. Thank you for having us today. We are very honored to be friends with Mr. John Paul Taylor, and we're here. He's with us here in spirit, and also our antepasados. We're very blessed. Today was a very important day, and I'd just like to say thank you and to keep our antepasados in our prayers, and also touching on the migrant farm workers. Like I said earlier, the Mother Earth is important to us, and we need to take care of her and as best we can, so that way she'll take care of us. Thank you very much.
This John Paul Taylor Symposium is for justice for farm workers. I want to say a couple of things about this. You're looking at the descendants of the original farm workers in this valley. And the first farms and the first irrigation systems were created by our ancestors in this valley. And we have seen many farm workers come and go, and we have seen the injustice that is done to these farm workers. We join in prayer, and we join with New Mexico State and with the people that are working for this symposium to pray for better treatment for the farm workers. In recognition of the farm workers, we have put together this basket recognizing the fruit of the labor of these farm workers for all of us. Gracias. Ya con eso.
Once again, thank you to the Tortugas Pueblo for such a meaningful blessing. Our first guest this evening is NMSU Chancellor Dan Arvizu. In June of 2018, Dr. Arvizu became Chancellor of the New Mexico State University System. NMSU is New Mexico's land-grant institution, founded in 1888, and is presently one of the nation's foremost Hispanic-serving universities. Chancellor Arvizu is the second alumnus and first Hispanic to be hired as the NMSU System Chancellor and Chief Executive. He started his career in 1973 at Bell Labs, then spent 21 years at Sandia National Labs. In 2005, he was appointed the eighth director of the U.S. Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Colorado, and became the first Hispanic lab director in the history of any of the 17 national labs. He retired in 2015 and is presently Director Emeritus. In 2004, he was appointed by President George W. Bush, and in 2010 was reappointed by President Barack Obama to serve 6-year terms on the National Science Board, the governing body of the National Science Foundation. He was twice elected chairman of that board by his peers, making him the first Hispanic chair. In 2016, he received the Secretary of Energy's Exceptional Service Award for more than 3 decades of energy contributions. He has received numerous awards and recognitions, including induction as a member of the U.S. News and World Report STEM Leadership Hall of Fame and the Hispanic Scientist of the Year by the Museum of Science and Industry. I leave you with NMSU Chancellor Arvizu.
Well, thank you, Martha, for that very generous introduction. And what an honor, what a pleasure it is for me to get a chance to provide some opening remarks to the 16th annual J. Paul Taylor Social Justice Symposium. It's one of the highlights of the year for me, primarily because it focuses on our mission so directly. I'll start my remarks by saying what I've said for the last year, which is I wish we could do this in person. I am so committed to getting a chance to engage with our community and be able to not only engage, break bread, find times to socialize with our wonderful partners in our community. And this is one of those events where we get a chance to do that. And it's very heartwarming and uplifting. So I miss the personal interaction, but I know that many of us are looking forward, hopefully in the near future, that we'll be back together and getting an opportunity to re-engage on a more personal and intimate level. I'm so proud of all of the things that are going on here at NMSU. One thing I can say in the pandemic has taught us is that our people are both, I think, extremely committed, dedicated, and very, very resilient. Many of us have gone through hardships of all kinds this past year. This has been a year like no other. The year 2020 will be one that goes down as one of those years that we're likely to not want to have to remember very much. But it is a year that has taught us a lot. With the challenges that the pandemic has brought from the health perspective, as well as the financial perspective, as well as the social unrest and all of the things that go along with the past year, it's been very, very challenging for all of us. And so I'm always very grateful to the people and the partners in our community for how resilient they have been in these very, very difficult times. I'm pleased to say that New Mexico State University is, I think on a good path despite the challenges that we have. I think we recognize how difficult the past year has been. We recognize how hard it's been on our students, on our faculty, on our staff, on our community, and we're committed to getting back to some semblance of normal in the very near future. We've got a lot of things that I think are things to be proud of and things to be happy about. And one of those is our mission. Our mission objective is really about helping the population of New Mexico in general. Very specifically, it's focused on social equity. We know in our state, we've had a number of challenges. Our underserved populations, primarily in the rural areas, has been very challenged, disproportionately, I think, hit by the pandemic. And yet what we've learned in the process of this is that many of our colleagues, many of our workers, our frontline workers, are actually essential to the well-being of our communities. And farm workers are in fact one of the key essential work sectors, I think, that didn't have the options of not participating in their day jobs whenever the pandemic hit. This was a very, very challenging time, and certain people on the front lines, and these are people that I call the unsung heroes of our day. People that deliver food, people that help make sure that our spaces are safe. These are frontline workers that really had very, very little choice in terms of what they could do relative to being able to stay home or lock down or all those kinds of things. They didn't have that choice. Farm workers were in that same mode, where the nature of the work and the opportunities that are there didn't really provide themselves the opportunity to do things that otherwise they may not have been able to do. So in that vein, I think it is wonderful that we get a chance to recognize farm workers, the disproportionate impacts that the pandemic and the financial crisis and all of the other activities of the day have imparted on them. Very, very difficult, challenging environments. And what can we as an institution, what can we as NMSU do? And so I appreciate our programs that we put together. All of our colleagues, the Academy. This J. Paul Taylor Symposium is one that draws attention to some of the more challenging issues of our day. And it is, in fact, I think, incumbent on all of us to pay attention and to support those folks who know, first of all, they provide a great service to the nation, but more importantly, need to have a sense of hope and well-being for the future. And we need to provide them that support structure that for the longest time has been missing. So I look forward to the events of this week. This being Farm Worker Week, and certainly how we can draw attention to the various issues. I think those are really important to us. I'm pleased that our land grant university's mission is really about social equity. It's about instruction, it's about research, and it's about outreach. And in the communities that we serve, primarily many of these are underserved populations. I'll end with just saying a couple of words about what I think the new administration that's coming in at the federal level will have to say. I was a part of helping the transition team put pieces together for this new administration, and I'm pleased to say that I think there'll be a renewed focus and attention to our border security issues, to our border partnerships, to the relationships in which we have enjoyed, again, the opportunity with our colleagues, on the other side of the border here in New Mexico and in Texas. And I think what we find is that there is renewed hope for some things that hopefully will be valuable, not just to the citizens of New Mexico, but to the people of the country, as well as the global economy as well. Working on things that relate to equity and building back better the infrastructure of our critical infrastructures, I think is going to be a priority. And we at the higher ed institutions will be ready to take on those responsibilities, I think, as time goes forward. So I think I'm looking forward to an opportunity for us to partner with our regional partners, not just in the research areas, but also in the business areas, to help for the recovery from the pandemic. I think order number one over the course of the next couple of years is going to be recovery from the pandemic, and then putting ourselves in a position where we can create jobs and opportunities for the future, with many of the skills that are going to be necessary for the future. So education is going to be vitally important, and we in higher ed want to be part of that solution. So working together with our partners, I think we can begin to address some of the ills and the challenges that we see in our underserved communities, and specifically with farm workers that we depend on so importantly and so vitally for our health and well-being. So with that, I will just say, looking forward to a great week, looking forward to all of the things that this Social Justice Symposium will provide in terms of learning, in terms of engagement, in terms of opportunity to collaborate with our friends and our colleagues of our community. So I wish you well, and I will look forward to hearing a lot more about the wonderful things that are going on here at NMSU, and especially that this 16th annual J. Paul Taylor Social Justice Symposium will be another great success in the spirit of honoring the legacy and the continued service of J. Paul Taylor, who has been a huge pillar of our community, and someone who has provided us the encouragement to go forward. So with that, let me just say congratulations to J. Paul Taylor for yet sponsoring and helping us really celebrate I think some of the greater opportunities that we have in front of us. Thank you again, and have a great conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chancellor Arvizu, for joining us this evening. In 2020, Mr. Taylor celebrated his 100th birthday. Born in Chamberino, New Mexico, to parents of Hispanic and Irish ancestry, Mr. Taylor spent more than 3 decades as a teacher, principal, and associate superintendent in the Las Cruces public school system. After he retired, he served 9 consecutive terms as a representative for District 33 in the New Mexico legislature. During his tenure, he was known for his support of programs to help indigent and disabled New Mexicans, and as an advocate for arts and culture. Mr. Taylor has respectfully been called the conscience of the New Mexico legislature. Please enjoy this brief welcome by Mr. Taylor.
Welcome, everyone. This is J. Paul Taylor, inviting you to the 16th Symposium on Human Needs. The subject this year is human needs of the farm workers. The committee has worked extremely hard in presenting a program which I know you'll enjoy. So stay with us for 5 more nights to gain a better understanding of the farm workers' needs.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. It is always an honor to see Mr. Taylor, and we send you our love. Thank you so much. We will now recognize the Social Justice Awardees for the symposium. To present the Government Department's Social Justice Award, NMSU Government Department Head, Dr. Neil Harvey, will recognize these recipients. Dr. Harvey.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Dr. Bejarano, for providing this opportunity to present the Department of Government Social Justice Award. And on behalf of our selection committee, I'm happy to present the recipients for this year's award. Before doing so, I'd like to thank the members of the committee for their work in reviewing the nominations that we received. And those members of the committee are Jan Thompson, Adrian Aguirre, Susie Johnson, and Angeline Sunday. In addition, I thank Sally Meisenhelder, who graduated with her Master's in Government in 2002 from NMSU, and soon afterwards established this award and the funds to recognize recipients. This award is designed to recognize NMSU students, staff, and faculty who have gone above and beyond their usual work commitments to make significant contributions to furthering social justice on campus and in the community. The recipients of this award from the Department of Government for this year are Ashley Rose Francia, Dr. Margaret Brown Vega, and Dr. Nathan Craig. Let me first introduce Ashley Rose. Ashley Rose Francia is a graduate student in her final semester of the MPA, or Masters in Public Administration program at NMSU. And she was selected for her outstanding efforts to promote social justice at NMSU and in the wider community. As Secretary of the Government Graduate Student Organization, or GGSO, she took the lead in establishing a new social equity scholarship to support students who are committed to social justice activism in Congressional District 2 of New Mexico, so far raising over $1,600 through a variety of activities, including the on-campus showing of the film Just Mercy. She has also volunteered with La Piñon Sexual Assault Recovery Service and has worked to enhance diversity, inclusion, and equity at NMSU through her internship with the Office of Institutional Equity, as a member of the Diversity Council, and as Vice President of the Graduate Student Council. She was nominated by Dr. Tad Connor, Associate Professor in the Department of Government. Congratulations, Ashley Rose. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thank you so much. I'm very honored to receive this award. But the scholarship that we were able to fundraise for was not an individual effort. I'd like to thank Black Programs at NMSU for assisting, and Patrick Turner with First Year Initiatives for the idea. It has definitely been an effort that took a lot of time, and I'm really excited to continue fundraising. I really think that students, high school students in the 2nd Congressional District, are very impassioned. And there are a lot of students who do want to seek to influence public policy, and I think we should reward them and create a pathway for them to seek their education at NMSU. I was very lucky to receive scholarships when I came to NMSU, and I wouldn't be here without them. So I wanted to create that similar pathway. I would like to thank the Symposium for the opportunity to publicize this award, and I encourage all students to apply when it becomes available, which the government department will publicize as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashley Rose, and congratulations. Our other recipients of this award are Dr. Margaret Brown Vega and Dr. Nathan Craig, who were nominated by the Department of Anthropology at NMSU. Dr. Brown Vega and Dr. Craig are both adjunct faculty members in the Department of Anthropology, and they were selected because of their long-term accompaniment, research, and advocacy for migrants held in ICE detention, in which they have not only provided immediate assistance to hundreds of migrants seeking legal services, but also documented abuse and negligent treatment. Their volunteer work as members of Advocate Visitors with Immigrants in Detention, or AVID, is exemplary and provides important analysis to encourage policymakers and the broader public to call for an end to detention and the creation of more humane and just immigration policies. Congratulations, Dr. Brown Vega and Dr. Craig. Would you each like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you very much, Dr. Harvey. I want to thank the Department of Government for this award in recognition of our immigrant advocacy and our abolitionist work. I know that there are many people who work toward social justice, including those who struggle against and stand up to injustice on a daily basis, who do not receive much recognition. And so I'm deeply humbled to be recognized, and I want to express solidarity with all of those who are not recognized. And in thinking about this year's symposium focus on farm workers, I also want to express solidarity with those whose labor our economies and food systems, rely on. I acknowledge the inequities in labor, in access to healthcare, education, and in access to the fundamental things that we all need to not just get by, but to thrive. So kind of a parting thought, I'd like to say that I think for us to collectively make a more just society, we must all do our best to engage in the daily work of challenging injustice when we see it, wherever we see it, and in not engaging in the very systems of oppression that we seek to undo. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm grateful to the department that the Department of Government chose to honor our work to expose the cruelty of and to abolish immigration detention. This year's Social Justice Symposium theme, Justice for Farm Workers, touches on important aspects of labor exploitation that are woven into our society's food system. As the symposium examines the need for farm worker justice and touches on labor history, I want to take a moment to draw attention to the widespread labor exploitation that occurs in immigration detention. To detain migrants, the United States spends nearly $3 billion a year. Yet despite this massive carceral budget, to remain operative, immigration detention facilities depend on atrociously exploitative labor practices. Through a government program whose history traces back to Japanese internment, a literally captive labor force of incarcerated migrants cleans, cooks, and launders while being compensated $1 for an 8-hour workday. That is less than 13 cents an hour under numerous Republican and Democrat administrations. Not only are people being unnecessarily imprisoned, they are paid slaving wages through an unjust, crooked scheme that evades labor laws by euphemistically calling employment volunteer work. Many of the people we've spoken to in immigration detention are farm workers ensnared in the deportation machine. In addition to being time to end a cruel, unjust, and unnecessary system of immigration detention, it is time we have justice for farm workers. I want to again thank the Department of Government for recognizing our efforts to expose and end the legalized violence of immigration detention, and for the opportunity to join the chorus of voices gathered together here calling for justice for farm workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Craig and Dr. Brown-Vega, and many congratulations again on your fine work.
Thank you, Dr. Harvey. And here I am. Thank you, Dr. Harvey, and congratulations again to the Government Department's Social Justice Award recipients. Now, we will move on to the J. Paul Taylor Social Justice Community Award, which recognizes the advocacy and outreach efforts of individuals working to improve the lives of others in the region. We would like to recognize 2 individuals who are dedicating their lives to advance the educational opportunities for local youth, especially farm working youth and children. Omar Hernandez will be the first recipient of the J. Paul Taylor Social Justice Community Award. Omar Hernandez, a native of Ciudad Juárez, Mexico, spent his early childhood with his grandparents in Guanajuato, Mexico. At age 6, Omar immigrated to the US and began living the life of a farm worker alongside his mother. They lived throughout the Rio Grande Valley from Sunland Park to Array in southern New Mexico. At the age of 8, his family settled in Hatch, and in 2006, Omar graduated from Hatch Valley High School and was recruited to NMSU by the College Assistance Migrant Program. In 2013, Omar received bachelor degrees in secondary education and biology. He immediately returned home to the Hatch Valley. Since then, he has taught and coached young people from his hometown. He's currently teaching physical science, biology, and chemistry while coaching varsity soccer, science Olympiad, and track and field. Omar spends much of his time as a resource and advocate for students in his community. His goal is to have a positive influence in young people's lives, encouraging them to see beyond the valley and help them find the courage to change the cycle of oppression they experience and to seek a purposeful, driven life. Shara Montoya, principal of Hatch Valley High School, shared this about Omar. Mr. Hernandez works diligently to empower all students at Hatch Valley High School to create more successful outcomes, both academically as well as personally. He is an important figure in his students' lives and pushes them daily to reach their ultimate potential. He is an asset to the community of Hatch and illustrates for his students each and every day the value of hard work and dedication. It is my honor to introduce to you Mr. Hernandez.
Hi, hello, Marta. Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys see me? Yes? Okay, sorry. Okay, muchas gracias, Marta. Oh man, that kind of made me think a little bit. That you got me off guard with that. I don't know, you had talked to my principal. So I mean, first of all, I just want to take a minute to thank Marta and Dr. Bejarano for even thinking of me for this honor. I guess I'm not used to being recognized for doing something I love. I came back to the Valley to make a difference, and I never really thought about recognitions or awards or any of that stuff. And so it's an honor for me to accept this a beautiful plaque that you guys sent me. I just want to thank I mean, a bunch of people, but first of all, quiero darle gracias a mi madre y a mis hermanas porque ellas fueron las personas más influentes en mi vida. I've been blessed to have a great relationship with those three women that has kept motivating me to fight for justice and fight for others. I truly believe that service to others is happiness. I believe that I will continue to do this because I love seeing the success stories, and more than that, I just love when kids understand that an education is a great tool and a great key and a weapon to be able to defend yourself. And so with that, I mean, I will continue to fight for farm workers. I believe that. Especially like after this pandemic, we should realize, if you lived in Hatch, nothing changed. We kept working, we kept picking chili, we kept picking topping onions, we kept doing everything. So I'm very proud to be part of this year's recognitions. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that as farm workers, we're just as valuable as anybody. We deserve justice, we deserve rights, we deserve many things, and I'm so blessed and grateful that we get a spotlight. And as somebody that sometimes working in the Valley, sometimes we don't get a second look. It's awesome that we're getting a spotlight for a bit, and that some people are gonna hopefully learn about some of the things that go on in order to get food to everybody's tables. And so I'm just proud. I'm just very proud. Thank you, Marta. Thank you, Dr. Bejarano, and thank you, everybody from the J. Paul Taylor Justice Symposium. I'm just very grateful. I want to thank everybody again. And I don't know. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Omar. We're so incredibly proud of you and the work that you do to pay it forward in your community of Hatch and serving as a role model for all of our students, all our farm working students. We're so proud of you. Our second recipient of the J. Paul Taylor Social Justice Symposium Community Award goes to Bernardo Naro Manuel Lopez Casas. Naro was born in Santa Catarina, Guanajuato, Mexico. When his father migrated to the US, Naro and his family stayed in Mexico as their father became a migrant farm worker traveling from one state to another searching for agricultural jobs. At 11, Naro and his family migrated to the US to join their father. By age 12, he started working in the fields with his parents and continued to do so every summer until young adulthood. He graduated high school in 2009 and was recruited by the College Assistance Migrant Program to attend NMSU. Once in college, Nato continued to work in the fields until 2012, when he landed a summer internship in North Carolina with Student Action with Farm Workers, where he provided educational support to migrant students and connected them to community resources. Nato returned to SAP to work at the Farm Workers Project to provide health education and access to migrant workers in Benson, North Carolina. There, Nato translated, transported, and distributed medical supplies to farm workers. In 2013, he graduated with a degree in social work from NMSU and was soon hired as a migrant education program recruiter for Las Cruces Public Schools. Nato is currently serving as the identification and recruitment coordinator for the New Mexico Migrant Education Program and oversees statewide training for migrant recruiters. Iggy Campos, bilingual coordinator for the Las Cruces Public Schools, said about Nato, "Bernardo's commitment in recruiting and serving our migrant families is unmatched. He goes above and beyond to ensure that we meet the needs of our families, no matter the day or time. His commitment to his job and his personal focus on continuous improvement makes him very deserving for this award." Now, we were informed that Mr. Lopez Casas was having some difficulty logging on and will likely not be able to join us this evening, but he might be watching from an audience link. And if he is, we want to tell him how much we appreciate him and how proud also that we are of Nato. It's a complete privilege to be able to see our camp students move from the freshman year into their graduation and to see the good social justice work that they continue to do in their communities and across the borderlands and across New Mexico. So Nato and Omar are some of the unsung heroes that are very, very deserving of this time and this space. And there is Nato. It looks like he may have logged on. So if Nato, you can turn on your mic, and there he is.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bejarano and Marta, for considering me for this award. This is the second time I get nominated for this, and I feel really proud of myself, and also proud that migrant farm workers, are valued, and they get recognition as well during this week for all the work that they have done to put food on our tables. And during this pandemic, they continue working. We saw my parents and other people in the communities continue working, even though the conditions that we live during this last year. And I want to dedicate also this award to my dad. He passed away on October from pancreatic cancer, and even until his last day, he thought about going back to the fields. He always said, whenever I get better, I want to go and pick chili as soon as I can, because that's life. He did migrated for several years from Texas to California, and then when we arrived, he settled down in New Mexico, and I thank him for that and for all the support that I received during my high school years and also college. Because of camp, I was able to graduate, and I dedicate this this award to him and to other farm workers that have passed away, because they do a lot for for the people, and sometimes they don't even know how important their work is, but they do it every day. They work every morning, they from sunrise to sunset, so they really work hard for us to have food on our table. I just want to say thank you to all that organized this event and this symposium, and thank you for considering me for this award.
Thank you, Nato. I'm so happy you were able to log on, and thank you for your wise words and for all the work that you do. We value and we respect and we appreciate you so much, and we're so proud of you.
Thank you.
So now we're ready to introduce, it is my great honor to introduce our keynote New Mexico Attorney General Hector Valderas. Hector was raised by a single mother in the rural village of Wagon Mound, New Mexico. Growing up on food stamps and in public housing, he learned the importance of compassion and respect. He developed a deep conviction that everyone deserves the same opportunities to succeed, regardless of background. Overcoming all challenges, Hector earned degrees from New Mexico Highlands University and the University of New Mexico School of Law, becoming the first attorney from his hometown. In 2003, Hector returned to Wagon Mound with his wife and 3 children to give back to his community. At age 29, with no prior political experience, Hector ran for a seat and won in the New Mexico House of Representatives, where he united Democrats and Republicans to pass numerous legislation. Pledging to bring transparency to the government's financial affairs, he was elected New Mexico State's auditor in 2006, becoming America's youngest Hispanic statewide elected official at the time. He was reelected in 2010 with overwhelming support across parties. In 2014, Hector was elected the 31st Attorney General for the state of New Mexico and was again reelected in 2018. Hector's core governing principle is that New Mexicans deserve safe communities and honest, accountable government. He rebuilt the Office of the Attorney General to focus on its role as the people's lawyer. Under his leadership, the office aggressively investigates, pursues, and prosecutes those who exploit the vulnerable. As a champion for children and families, Hector fights to protect New Mexicans. Hector has been honored with a variety of awards, including the prestigious New Frontier Award, jointly awarded by the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation and the Harvard Institute of Politics. With you now is our New Mexico Attorney General, Hector Valderas. Thank you for joining.
Unmute. Can you hear me, Doctora? Well, thank you. And I want to send a deep thank you and gratitude to Cynthia and Martha, who really do phenomenal work, not only representing academia, but also our best and brightest students in New Mexico, our treasure, really. And it takes stewards and trustees like Cynthia and Martha, who really bring solutions together and really create a platform of experiences that I think are life-changing. And so I first want to thank Cynthia and Martha for doing the special work that they do. Also, I'd like to acknowledge J. Paul Taylor, an inspiration, the proper namesake for a great event like this. I was a young legislator entering public life when Representative Taylor was retiring. And I not only remember him really having the tenacity of justice and really calling upon leaders to do more and better for our communities, but he was nicknamed the conscience of the legislature. And after 15 years in public life, I have still yet to run into a more skilled, conscience-driven lawmaker. And so to J. Paul Taylor, we miss you. And we are all just trying to do and honor your legacy. I'd also like to thank the university community, New Mexico State, and of course, CAMP and all the partners. You're about to embark on an exciting week of discussion, and I want to send a shout out to all the award winners. I read many of the biographies and the reasons why they were being honored this week, and I think it's fitting. Individuals who went through camp, who are giving back in public schools, individuals who are on the front lines of fighting sexual abuse in our communities and violence against women. So you have a wonderful, not only wonderful award nominations, but also the speakers and the ideas that are going to be discussed. So the reason I want to thank all of you today is because we need symposiums like this now more than ever. And I wish you all health and safety, not only us adjusting in this pandemic, addressing. I wish I could all be in front of you and we could be together in southern New Mexico, but it's not lost on me that many of our own families have faced tragedy and trauma because of COVID. And so solidarity to all of you. And I feel very honored and blessed to be able to do this kind of work on a Sunday evening here. I would never have missed this event. Number two, the reason I wish you all safety and prosperity, and I'm grateful tonight and over the next week that we all can come together and share ideas, is that many Americans across this country will not experience that privilege that we're all about to embark on this week with the shootings in Boulder and the Asian American communities under attack. It's with great sorrow that that I, as your Attorney General, report to you that we have much work to do in the area of civil rights, providing safety, making sure that the Constitution is applicable for everyone. And we have much work to do in combating domestic terrorism and hate and racism in this country. And the work is very difficult and challenging. And so the fact that this week we can come around the man and the mission of J. Paul Taylor to talk about migrant farm workers and, more importantly, their children and their families provides great optimism for me. I need you more than you need me today, now more than ever in this country. And I thank you for the platform and the kind of positive, honorable, and most importantly, dignified work in the way that you all come together. Not every community right now has that opportunity because of the chaos, the crime, the violence, and the unrest. There are many cultural communities across this country that are under duress and are very scared. So it's a perfect, I guess, segue to tell you why I'm so excited and such an honor. First of all, I have great respect for the NMSU community. My son just recently graduated from NMSU with a degree in business. It's not only a phenomenal educational institution, but its premier agricultural focus and the support from the academic institutions down in southern New Mexico really provide great hope for me because of what you all produce. The ability for you to produce some of the best and brightest and toughest and tested young leaders in this nation is something I will be forever grateful to you. The future is bright, regardless of the level of violence and poverty and unrest in our government. I'm here to remind you all that you all provide us great hope in decision making. It's also a great honor for me to remind everyone that the symposium carrying one of the most revered public servants, J. Paul Taylor, motivates me and many others very personally. This is not only about recognition, but you all, your ideas, your calls to action really inspire all of us to take hold so that we can continue to take actions that benefit our community. I jumped at this opportunity to address all of you in this symposium, especially when I saw the focus was going to be facing farm workers and our communities that are impacted by that industry in our region. The reason I jumped at this is that many of you do not know my complete background. I like to say I was from a forgotten community. Many of you are probably not familiar with Wagon Mound. Wagon Mound is a ranching community. We don't have a lot of agriculture per se, but we have cows and sheep, and we do a lot of livestock work in northeastern part of New Mexico. I think there are many similarities between Wagon Mound, which used to be a big industry community in the early 1900s. The railroad would come through. But as the economies became more harsh, the jobs went away. And it was a proud community, and it is still a proud community of 300 people total. I say it's a forgotten community because when I lived there in Wagon Mound, in poverty and in public housing, our identities were challenged. In other words, when I was a young man, and many of the great students that we have that attend NMSU come from communities that are challenging. But when I was a younger man, probably 15, 14, 13-year-old student, I was already insecure about the community that I came from. I had already concluded that it was a forgotten community, therefore it wasn't a valued community. And when I would watch television and I would watch sports and I would dream of richer places and communities that have restaurants and all the luxuries that a young man dreams of one day experiencing, I would watch TV and I would watch sports sometimes, basketball. And many of you are too young to remember, but Michael Jordan would come out on TV and the announcer would say, Michael Jordan just shot a brilliant shot. He just made a last second brilliant athletic play. And I had never heard the word brilliant used to describe a student in Wagon Mound or a ranch worker, or I had never heard the word brilliant used to describe what was going on in my public school. It was only later, and what I want to first share with our students is that regardless of your community, you are all brilliant. I had to wait for it to be described of a professional athlete, the word brilliant. And it's very important for me tonight to convey to those that are mentors and those that are teachers and instructors to stay daily motivated in convincing your students not only that they are valuable, but that they are brilliant, that their identities, where they come from, that struggle can also be brilliant. And it wasn't years later that I soon realized that I came not from a forgotten community, but a community with beautiful people, valuable people, and brilliant people like my grandfather, who didn't have a PhD or an advanced degree, but he had a Bronze Star because he fought valiantly in the military and never spoke to me about his courage or valor. And it wasn't until he passed away that people would explain to me what a brave man that he was. And that to me is brilliance. And what we are focused on this week is that we are surrounding ourselves around the future generation that is brilliant and that will lead us to greater solutions. The reason I share that word brilliant with you is that I was insecure and I didn't know my own abilities because I let my early identity be shaped by things that were probably the wrong focus. So as now that I know that you are all brilliant, and that I have an investing in all of you, I want to honor some of the communities that you come from in southern New Mexico. I want to remind us all that the brilliant work sometimes doesn't show up on TV through an athletic play through Michael Jordan. Some of that brilliant work is the mothers who are raising young children in rural New Mexico. Some of those in poverty who are trying to make ends meet and every day looking for hope and optimism because they're motivated by their loved ones, that they see the value in their family and in their future. I want to honor you tonight. Also, I want to remind all of us that feel sometimes we're from forgotten communities that we are not going to just focus on easy solutions or easy blame. This symposium is important, and why I jumped at it is because it's willing to do the hard work. And many of these ideas that come about here have the real possibility to generating the next attorney general, the next governor, the next entrepreneur, the next civil rights leader. I want to honor you for creating such a platform because, like me, I didn't understand that I had any brilliant future ahead of me in Wagamon when I was in those public schools. But as I began to be taught between right and wrong and justice, it is remarkable that I would have become not only the first attorney from Mora County, a complete ranching community, first attorney ever, and that the people of New Mexico, the people that are engaged in this institute and this symposium all of this week, that they truly are the gatekeepers for the next generation of leaders. I did not understand at the time that I could be not only the first attorney in my community to represent my community, right when Joey Paul Taylor was retiring, but that I would go on to be the state's top lawyer from a county who had never had any legal graduates is a remarkable test to the community work that's about to be recognized this week. I come from this model. The camp, as you call it, is also inspiring to me because I was what's called a trio kid. As I was trying to deconstruct the word brilliant, I went to Highlands University, which was a public institution in Las Vegas, and it had open enrollment. I was not the brightest student. I was shy. And as I was saying earlier, I thought that we were already invisible from forgotten communities. It was a TRIO program, is support services for first generation college graduates, which I know that camp focuses on. And to me, that's so inspiring because I give all the credit to producing the first attorney and attorney general in the state of New Mexico from Mora County, to those counselors and support services at New Mexico Highlands University. And so this is why so much I support the J. Paul Taylor Symposium. Now, enough about me and my biography about why I'm so excited for the students and for recognizing brilliance and great work that you're all going to recognize this week. Gatherings like this are important as well because it's important for the state and our country to hear your voice. We are listening. It might be calling out your voice to fight injustice, a lack of regulation for safe farming communities. You might call out racism or classism. You might fight for better healthcare conditions for workers and families. Your voice ultimately is what determines what's fair and unfair. And at the Attorney General's office, when I was elected, I swore an oath to use powers in the interest and in the benefit of the public good. Now, what I want to remind our young students today is that I, coming from Wagon Mound, felt powerless. And my advice in this keynote, as we are honoring greatness, is that we are always going to have to be strategic and tactical with how we overcome being powerless. But it's just as important for all of us when we're students and organizers and activists and professors to understand that you all, including myself, that we are entitled to power as well. Not just the plight of the powerless, but that at some point we have to get that education. We have to elect people that have our life experience. We have to learn how to donate and build capacity and capital so that we can embrace power and create a better situation for our families. Another way to say that is that it is important for us to win for our communities. It was important for me not to just practice law, but to become the Attorney General, even if my county had never had the power to win those elections on their own. I mean, I come from a county of less than 1,000 Democratic voters and a city or a village of less than 150 votes. But I secured probably 400,000 voters to vote for our leadership because I was willing to fight and use the power in their benefit. As Attorney General, I have partnered with your families and your communities to work both on migrant and worker issues. But I've also stood on your side with my life experience that it was important for us to work together side by side. And so to some of the young students that are on tonight, I personally invite you to come to my office, or I'll visit you in Las Cruces so that we can sit together and I can hear your ideas and see what your passions are in wanting to help your community. That is what makes the Attorney General office more effective when we fight injustices, when we stand side by side with those that we are trying to fight for. We embrace you, we invite you, because you are entitled to own the courthouse. You are entitled when you walk in to a government facility to feel that you truly own that facility. The reason I share that with you and those stories is because when I was a young child, before I was going to high school or junior high, I remember my father and I were crossing the border. And his green card literally was going to expire the following day. And I'll never forget when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And my father had just one day to get back to the States, do some business, and his green card was going to run out, but he still had one day. And it was just me and my father crossing the border, and we were very scared. And we pull up, and the Border Patrol agent says, "Sir, this card is about to expire." My father said, "Yeah, I know, I have one day to see if I can get it renewed. I'm not sure, sir, I'm trying to get it renewed." He didn't understand the process. So I don't even know if it was in the mail, if he had ever reapplied. I just knew there was a problem. And my father, you could tell, didn't have answers, but he was more afraid of the Border Patrol agent. And the agent took it upon himself to say, "Well, you have one day. There's no way you're going to fix any of this. You need to go back." And my father had broken English. He was struggling, he was intimidated, but he knew it wasn't right. He had one day to get back to Midland and Odessa, Texas. I didn't quite understand what my father's due process rights were at the time. But he had the right to do whatever he needed to do until that card expired. But the officer exceeded his authority by law, by the Constitution, and made an administrative decision to send him back when all he's supposed to do, according to the law, is check the identity, check whether you have a lawful right to pass, and then it's none of their business when your card expires. This is probably the reason I went to law school. Can you imagine now the Attorney General, who as a child understood how it felt to be powerless, but understood that there was injustice, I just didn't know how to fight it. Understanding that my father didn't have the language or the connections or even the understanding of his own constitutional rights. He was just a vendedor trying to get back home. But can you imagine the irony tonight of why I'm so excited about this symposium? When that young man saw his father turned away, illegally, by the way, that same young man would then be growing up in poverty later, but being propelled by a little town like Wagon Mountain and Highlands and teachers and instructors and professors and vecinos. I would say, you know, you're not the smartest kid, but you're quiet and you listen. Those little compliments along the way, that young child would go on to be Attorney General. And not just Attorney General, who would get to sue the President of the United States, Donald Trump, when he chose to divert military funds to build a wall. I was one of those attorneys general that sued President Trump for violating the Constitution. I was the attorney general that sued ICE for targeting domestic violence victims who wanted to go to magistrate court and pay their tickets. I was the attorney general that has sued President Trump on various civil rights and immigration and census issues in the last couple of years on your behalf. And I probably did it because I was a young, scared child, son of a Mexicano. But I was also mentored by my rural communities, my communities of color and pobreza, and that I was ashamed of when I was a youngster coming from Wagon Mound. But those communities all propelled me so that I would have the power and the privilege that you give me to even sue the highest forms of government corruption and oppression. That's the kind of impact that I'm excited that the symposium is going to have for the next generation of leaders. So as we focus on great ideas, another good example that I want to highlight that we can work together as Attorney General. In 2017, I entered an agreement with the Department of Labor to fight wage theft and labor trafficking. So on one hand, I can sue the president, and on the other, we can partner with those federal agencies so that they're more thoughtful, more just, and that they truly follow through on being on the side of the exploited worker. I was proud to enter that agreement in 2017, and I look forward to finding new community partners in southern New Mexico, and maybe that is one of the ideas that I'll leave to the symposium. How is it that I can better partner with academic leaders, community leaders within your migrant farm worker communities? I would be honored to be your guest, for you to take me around southern New Mexico. But that's truly the power and the impact that us focusing on justice for farm workers can truly have. this is the work that we all have to do. I hope that I was able to share a little bit of insight about me coming from a forgotten community. I hope that you are at least a little inspired by my story, that no matter how difficult and how dark the shadows are that you come from, that you can truly rise up and have the full confidence of your community, knowing that you deserve the strongest constitution defending you. You are valuable, you are worthy, and this country needs you. Took me many decades to really learn that. And you own the government. We are here to serve you. The American dream is only fulfilled when we hear more stories like this. And I am excited to fight for justice with you. I would like to remind everyone that justice for me sometimes has to be a sword. Sometimes we have to become more tactical, and we have to engage in elections and in litigation and in lawsuits, and we have to fight. And then other times, justice can be a shield where reconciliation, inspiration, love are the way to go. So whatever our approaches, Mrs. Bejarano, Ms. Estrada, I want to thank you for just allowing me to share a few words of gratitude with your community. And hopefully I've conveyed really how fired up and inspired I am by your constituents and your students. And I just leave you all with this, that the honor and the privilege is really mine. I hope that I can share a little bit about my voice and my upbringing with your students, so that they really know that I know exactly who they are, what they dream of, what they're afraid of, because I was one of them in those programs. And it truly transformed my life. And I want to thank all of you for allowing me just to share a few words.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Valderas, for sharing your own experiences. I'm certain they are resonating with so many of our audience members that we are likely live internationally. We're hoping that your words are resonating across people across the entire nation and even beyond our borders.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for using your office to create
so
sound, effective, and just change for all New Mexicans, including those rendered invisible, which is a theme, an underlying theme of this social justice symposium, is how do we make those individuals that are rendered invisible visible? And that's our task at hand this week. And again, ultimately, thank you for fighting the good fight and for your inspiring words. We so appreciate it. We would like to let the audience members know that that you can pose a question to Attorney General Valderas. We invite you to use the Q&A section below. And my colleague Martha will also be helping me to field some of these questions. First question. Okay. Is there a first question? Okay. No, there isn't. Okay, since I have my mic on, I will take advantage of being the first to ask a question, if that's okay.
Sure.
So what we, as I mentioned a second ago, that one of our underlying themes is making the invisible visible. How can you and your office provide advocacy for farm workers, both those that are paid on farm payrolls and those that are not? And as we're talking about making farm workers more visible and having people understand the work that they do, the tireless and selfless work that they do, how can we make them more visible in a safe, protective environment where they're able to also assert their rights on what they're entitled to?
A great question, and I also want to extend my congratulations to your chancellor, Dan. I saw him pop up a little bit, Dr. Arvizo, and it's good to see him there. And you have great leaders in southern New Mexico, and I wanted to thank him for going down to southern New Mexico and taking the helm. I would say a couple of areas that come to mind very quickly. To the organizing community, I think the Attorney General's office has been underutilized. We're thought of a lot of times to investigate and to litigate, and I think sometimes we have hard power, what I call hard power, but that takes away from the real opportunity for us to better understand your activist community, your labor rights workers, your organizing leaders, I think. And so the Attorney General's office, the first focus would be just to set up a way for us to engage and listen to your needs. Let us help assist with identifying the human rights, labor rights. The legal processes oftentimes are intimidating and they're mysterious, and also for good reason. Many vulnerable people or vulnerable families tend to shy away because they say, well, those offices lock people up, they have power, I'm afraid of power, I don't trust those individuals. But we have a policy side where we would love to get to know those vulnerable populations, because we have a track record of representing other vulnerable populations. And we're driven by whatever the migrant farm community we want. So that's the first piece, is just demystifying the law and order side, and understanding that the AG's office, their number one obligation is to defend the Constitution of New Mexico and of the United States. And there are constitutional rights for everyone, regardless of even their nationality. I didn't understand that till I was like 32 years old. So there's a benefit for us to have the AG's office just connect with our plebe, I call them, our community, our real folks. That's the first piece. The second piece that's underutilized is that the Attorney General office wields a great amount of leverage on the economy, on the economic power. So when they created the Constitution in New Mexico and they created a toolbox for the Attorney General's office, if you have a stuffy lawyer who's your Attorney General, you'll never figure this out. But when you have a guy like me who's from Wagon Mound and feels very comfortable sitting under an apple tree with all walks of life of our beautiful state, we can brainstorm about what tools are available for those migrant farm workers to wield the leverage and try to bring about improvements in our economic power. So labor is just a commodity, but when you find out, when our ancianos and our farm workers find out that the Attorney General has an ability to enforce unfair trade practices, and those unfair trade practices in any industry could be shortchanging a laborer, or there could be wage theft. None of the business community wants the Attorney General to sue their industries. And I have some of the biggest lawsuits against Google right now for trying to reform child safety and child privacy. I have some of the biggest lawsuits against oil and gas companies. I have some of the biggest lawsuits. Tomorrow I'm going to be filing a lawsuit against Holtec, which is the largest private company, nuclear storage company in the world. But they want to store nuclear storage and dump nuclear waste by Carlsbad. And I want to make sure that they follow the law. So imagine when farm workers start getting ideas to improve the economy and their economic power, I think the AG's office potentially could be very helpful. So I would say, Cynthia, we've got to connect. So first thing, and they should feel like they own my office. And then number two, there's probably a tool in my toolbox that could help them provide leverage to bring about better conditions in the community. And it's nobody's fault. I accidentally became an attorney general just 6 years ago. So yeah, I would say we need to all just kind of get together and brainstorm would be a good thing.
There's a question in the chat. Okay, thank you so much, Attorney General Valderas. We're working, we're coordinating with the technology here and trying to decipher what are comments and what are questions to you. But I think it's so incredibly important for those audience members that are logging on as Spanish speakers. We have simultaneous interpretation. I'm hoping that people are listening in and feeling very hopeful about what your office does and understands how your office directly impacts their lives. We know that people feel very doubtful, perhaps ambiguous about people in positions of power and even offices. And through your story, I'm hoping again that it will resonate to a much wider audience of farm workers and others in the immigrant community. Southern New Mexico and many communities from Southern New Mexico have often felt like those forgotten communities that you've mentioned, like Wagon Mound. I think that's something that we have in common, our farm working students and others. And I'm wondering how we can, what can a farm worker do that does not have the legal status, let's say, living in Hatch, who might be dealing with a farm labor contractor or a farmer who isn't providing the correct wages that they need. How could we as community members or even organizations work together to raise their voices, better protect them? I know it's a very direct and specific question, but
no, that's a great question. So when I became AG about 6 years ago, and I was in the bottom third of my law class. Okay, so that gives you an idea of, but I knew why I was elected, and it's because, number one, communities knew that I came from likelier a Deming, a Hatch, a Wagon Mound, than a neighborhood of privilege or a family of privilege. So that was the first thing. And so when I became AG 6 years ago, I brought all these very smart lawyers and scientists and officers, and I brought them in. And the great thing about the Attorney General's office is I get to focus on whatever I want to be the priority. And the first thing that I did is I said that nobody that voted for me cares about the practice of law. Nobody. I was at the bottom third of my law class, and the only job I ever got was because I could connect with people that needed legal services, contractors, laborers, farmers. And that's the first thing. And the second thing I could do is I could always determine where the street fight needed to be, because that's how I grew up, not in the halls of justice, but outside in the streets, trying to fight for a little bit of dignity. So the first thing I did is I brought everybody together and I said, nobody cares about what the hell we're doing in the courtrooms. Yes, those are the tools. So I created a family services division, and it's got school counselors, labor activists, consumer rights activists, people that will rip people's heads off if they find out they overcharged you on your T-Mobile cell phone. So I have literally an army of about 15 people that are sitting by the phone waiting for one of your wage theft callers to call us. And then we will take the case and we will find who the right agency is, but we will make sure that you don't get blown off. There was recently a case that came out in the news where I'm suing. There's this private company that brought Filipino teachers from the Philippines to teach in Roswell. I don't know if you guys have heard about this case, but New Mexico is short about 1,000 teachers, and I'm sure Chancellor Arizo and we're trying to produce teachers at all our schools. We're short 1,000 teachers. So there's this private company that was bringing Filipino teachers here, but they were charging them excessive. They were promising that they would fix their immigration. They would charge them not only $15,000 of their $40,000 salary, but they would want a bounty when they got here, another $500, and then they wouldn't help them. So I finally sued that company. But those Filipino ladies had been getting exploited for 2 years. And somehow they found us and they called us. And then within 90 days, I was suing the company. And now they're very happy. They were very scared of the government. This is very similar to our Mexican American experience. They were very scared of the government. They didn't want to raise any problems to the schools. They didn't want to lose their jobs. They didn't want to go back. But this company was lying to them that they controlled their visa. They don't control their visa. And so, but that call came in. So we have a family services division at the AG's office. And a lot of times, my mom's not a lawyer and I'm the first guy in my family. That division is trained to talk Spanish, normal person, what I call Spanglish. They're not supposed to talk law. So when you call us, it's our job to try to understand you, the problem. And then the other thing is when you call us, they're not allowed to retaliate. So if they retaliate, then the person that is experiencing wage theft, that the company could get in a lot of problems. So they almost hope that you don't find us. But I would say, Cynthia, the best thing is we have a family services division and it's found some courageous people. And so if you have a wage theft problem, give me a call. I know the Secretary of Labor myself. But our job is to do case advocacy work for any consumer or what I call New Mexico problem. I get calls sometimes where the cable company is overcharging. So anyway, farm workers, feel free to call me. I think I might have lost you, but and I can figure out a way to get you all the numbers. If you just Google Hector Valderas family advocacy, you can call us or you can file a complaint online. But I would encourage your folks, Cynthia, to try us out. Give us a call. I think they'll be impressed how much we can mediate for them. Oh, no charge.
That's wonderful. That's such important information for our farm working families across the state. And so many that are relegated to the place where they live because they might be undocumented. I know that there's a question in the chat that has to do with NMSU becoming a sanctuary campus. That's from Professor Manuel Hamza. And as you work to protect New Mexicans and everyone who lives within the borders of our state, we also are trying to protect students who are vulnerable at New Mexico State and in other institutions of higher education. Do you have any thoughts on sanctuary campuses?
Yeah. So I think I'll just start off with the cultural piece first, and then I'll back into the law, and then what I think our position is. My dad came here selling what I don't know if everyone knows the Virgen de Guadalupe statues and what we call cuadros. My dad came to this country selling to all the Chicanos and Raza, all the different types of Virgens. And I would go with him selling them door to door to some of the West Texas agricultural communities. And I still remember to this day, we would pull up with a truck full of us salesmen, vendedores, and I was only like 11 years old, getting dropped off, and he'd say, okay, good luck. And he would drive around in the morning and the afternoon, and it's 100 degrees, and I'm in like Dalhart, Texas, selling these Catholic cuadros, and all the workers, would get excited about the Virgen de Guadalupe, or man, they've never seen that here in a while. So they would buy and I would sell. The reason I share with that anecdote is when a student, comes to New Mexico State and he has wonderful educators like yourselves and great administrators that still connect, there's still a disconnect because they're coming from my experience of we were just selling cuadros. And so when you tell them they're safe here, how are they going to believe you? I mean, I was just in the back of a truck at 11 years old, probably not safely. I shouldn't have been in the back driving on the highway as a kid, violating traffic laws with a bunch of other Mexicanos selling cuadros, but we were going from town to town. So when I tell you this as the Attorney General, but I also tell you this as someone who knows that you're doubtful. When I was selling those cuadros, I didn't go around West Texas saying, I know my rights, and I know that law enforcement, even though I'm brown and I'm young and I'm a little suspicious in the neighborhood, I didn't understand that we live in this country that's different than Mexico and China, because regardless of how pobre I am and suspicious looking, and regardless that the norm is 11-year-old kids should not be selling cuadros in foreign villages, that ultimately you need to know as students that in this country, we restrict police power. I don't care that you're a chavalito from Hatch, that the chancellor and Cynthia, that they have a right to educate the kids and the students in New Mexico State without any federal interference of ICE or any local law enforcement. Not because you're all nice people, but because we live in a country that restricts police powers. Now, when I was selling cuadros, I didn't know that either. I would look, I'd see there's the cop over there, and I would kind of hide because I knew it would look weird. I mean, I would get my dad reported to social services in Texas, but I didn't understand that we have a restriction on police power because that's what makes our Constitution great. And I would sit with your students. Maybe one day we'll put another panel where I can just sit with them and talk about the constitutional rights are not just legal rights. They should also make you confident in your culture. And we're not there yet. We're still very, and a lot of officers and ICE officers don't know the Constitution yet either. So which is why I engage in litigation and we'll have to sue them sometimes. But I want your students to understand that not only is it unjust, that I will engage in litigation, and that is against the law for them to engage in our educational institutions and try to pursue their nationality or their immigration status, because if they can overreach with all of you, then they can overreach with any other individual and violate the Constitution. So we have limited police powers. Now, I will tell you, we have to fight every day, good and bad, on both sides, where we're testing that. But the more educated that our students can become and our faculty, that it's also grounded in the law, not just right or wrong, but that then there's more opportunity for us to better organize so that we really can prevent it from happening. Because that's not to say we don't experience overreach. When I sued ICE over ICE going into the courts, the local courts, judges were pissed off because they said, go do your ICE stuff out. So I can imagine that educators don't want that interference as well. But it was judges that called me because we didn't know this was happening. They would run somebody who has a traffic ticket and then they would go upend their family. So I would be honored to partner with NMSU if you feel that that your rights are not respected as an institution. That's another area, but yeah, it's grounded in the Constitution that just because the president thinks he wants his ICE agents to target, he doesn't have that lawful authority to go interfere with the health or the educating of of our citizens or non-citizens within the four corners of our Constitution. The other thing, and a little bit of constitutional law that's impacting the culture. So just like I used to sell cuadros in Texas, and I felt like the laws and Constitution didn't restrict those people who discriminate against me, like the officers and judging me. I had to culturally grow up, and the other thing that's a mystery is I want our community here to know we have two constitutions. One is federal that all the politicians cite about, but you also, because you live in New Mexico, you have a very special constitution, state constitution. And that if you don't know after this speech, that the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, when they were negotiating the state transfer, we have one of the most exciting, progressive, cultural constitutions in the United States. And that's the constitution that I sue the federal government. And I say, no. Our constitutional rights on state rights are supreme to your violations of federal law. Texas likes to flip it. They always like to sue. Texas always likes to sue the feds. Well, I also sue on your behalf the federal government when they overreach on our educational institutions or our court systems. But I want our young students in New Mexico State to know that, you know what, I'm going to read the state constitution and the federal constitution, because what it also restricts is not just federal law enforcement and federal immigration, but that state constitution is an equal sovereign to the federal government. There are some things. The reason we lose more ICE battles is because they have more federal sovereign authority for the country. But when you get educated here, when you get your health care here, when you have a job, those are state rights, and you should have your state defend you if you feel like you're being harassed, especially on our borders here in New Mexico. So hopefully that's my cultural lesson about the law, is that I want our Nuevo Mexicanos to feel that those are their words and that's their voice. That's how we bring to life some of these legal actions on their behalf.
Thank you again. Thank you so much. I wanted to share that we had someone from Camacho Law Firm say that it was an honor to work with you. That was one of our comments. And then also from Dr. Judith Flores Carmona, who's the Director of Chicano Programs and Faculty in the Honors College here at New Mexico State. She's stating, thank you for being an inspiration to many of us in the audience. And then also just commenting on your words of inspiration for our students. Yes, Mr. Attorney General, thank you. We all need more education is what she said. And Dr. Hamza, phenomenal question. I wonder if I can maybe take the liberty of posing the last question again. I'm inserting myself a lot here, but I promise this will be the last question. Since you mentioned ICE and that we are a border state, we all have been bombarded with images of Central American migrants that are working their way. And this is no new news. This has been a phenomena. People are fleeing violence in the Northern Triangle. They're fleeing their countries looking for a better future. And I would argue it is not only our moral obligation, but also our understanding and interpretation of international conventions and treaties and being signatories or not, that we need to respect not only social justice, but human rights. Mm-hmm. And with unaccompanied minors, Central American unaccompanied minors coming to our border area, some of those young men and women and transgendered youth will become farm workers. It's what we see across New Mexico. We see indigenous Central American farm workers in our agricultural fields across New Mexico. And I just wondered if we could take just another minute of your time before we close and introduce our butterfly project that I hope you as well can submit a butterfly project with a message of hope to farm workers. But if you wouldn't mind sharing some of your comments briefly.
Yeah, Yeah, two things that just jump to mind. And when we talk about the rule of law or the Constitution, really it's our democracy. And our raza or our Latinos, we're shy. We're shy. So the law is sometimes obnoxious and black and white. And Latinos we live in the gray. We have so much strong culture that's grounded in a life experience. And sometimes the law is this abstract, sometimes doesn't mesh with our culture very well. You know, we'd rather get together and cook a warm meal or work together and work. You know, my dad was always vendedor, let's sell, and because we're a humble people, the law is obnoxious. The law must be active. The law is, by its nature, conflict driven. And a lot of Latinos, we don't want to be, unless you're a cholo that's taught to fight in the streets, we're generally not a conflict culture. Our whole basis of getting up is to share and to care for one another and to have faith. When you think about it, it's a little bit uncomfortable. So when Trump was deconstructing refugee law like it was an inconvenience, and I saw even a lot of our activists frustrated because they knew that it was wrong because it violated norms of human rights. But I didn't hear any of the reasoning beyond human rights. Yes, it's wrong to not provide due process and safety to children and families that are fleeing persecution. But do you know why it's also wrong? Because it violates international and federal law. We created these protections ourselves because we're a nation of refugees, just like we're a nation of immigrants. And so the fact that the most wealthy nation in the world all of a sudden was acting like this was just a population problem, a crime problem, rather than a legal problem, rather than a justice challenge for America, like the way we segregated our schools when you wouldn't allow Blacks and Mexicanos in schools. This country rallied around coming up with a solution of justice. I have a special needs daughter, and she receives certain funding and certain protections in the educational institution. Somebody came around beyond just morality and said, we want a system of justice that guarantees this young lady certain rights in the educational system and gives her the opportunity, even though she's different, to be given the least restrictive education so that she can learn and share and grow with other students and stop discriminating against her. Well, we created some of the best refugee and asylum law in the world, this country, and it was a shame that not even a lot of our common Americans, we wanted to defend those children because it was wrong, but we didn't understand the basic rights that child also is entitled to. And so we were saying stupid stuff like, well, if we process them, I don't want to let them in this country. I want to send them back. Well, you can't. That's illegal. That's illegal. If they're being persecuted or their life is being threatened in a certain way, we have an obligation because we made the law. We're the rule of law nation. We made the laws. And we did the same thing for the Cubans in the 80s. And so and I'm like I said, I'm not a smart attorney. I mean, that's not my field. I'm an attorney, but I worry when there are a lot more passionate activists, smart professors, a lot more talented people than me, don't always understand about the right way to fight for the rights that those children in our Latino communities entitled to. So sometimes when we just say, well, they're being bad or they're being evil or they're wrong, we're probably not doing what Cesar Chavez would have wanted. Is he wants us to win. He wants us to know that you have rights and that the system itself can no longer commit illegal acts. That's what the children at the border, we had and we continue to have an illegal system. They're not the illegals. We have the illegal system that doesn't have enough judges down there, enough human rights activists, and our facilities should be able to handle the refugee population that's coming in. But refugee and asylum law is different than immigration law. And again, we at the AG's office are part of that dialogue. And then the other area, Cynthia, I'll close with, because I take too long to answer your questions, but I'm passionate about this and you guys. We were part of the movement when you saw those domestic terrorists get on your border and get down there. They were hunting for migrants, and they were these citizen guys from Idaho, and I don't know where they came from. There was trailers at Sunland Park. Okay. I didn't take any time to debate them about how American they were or how misunderstood they were in the law. Okay. But what I did do is I did apply the rule of law to them. And then when I knew that they had illegal firearms and they were felons, I did what any rule of law enforcement officer would do, is we shouldn't just apply the law to communities of color, that if you illegally have, so I didn't even debate them on their constitution of them trying to keep illegals out, that was their American militia dream. I simply hit them on the fact that they were violating law in New Mexico at our border because they were not allowed to carry illegal firearms. And some of these guys were felons calling themselves military. And the second thing that we're not allowed to do in my border, in my state, is you're not allowed to impersonate a law enforcement officer, especially if you think you're an ICE officer. That is a crime. So we began those investigations. And so we use that, but that is just not because it was the right or wrong thing to do. We applied the law. And what Cesar Chavez would say is we have to organize, but we have to organize for a better outcome to win. And that is probably one of the most significant experiences as your attorney general, was to flip the militia debate into, wait a minute, you're not hunting illegals that are crossing the border, that are committing crimes coming here. You're committing a crime first, number one. And number two, you're not supposed to, if you want to go to become an ICE officer or Sunland Park Police Department officer, go to the academy. And but you're not going to terrorize what could be immigrants, or it could be refugees. We didn't know because they have to go before a judge. So I'll shut up there, but I could talk war stories with all of you for days about some of the, and then the other thing that I will say is some of these stories are yours. You know why I let the foot off the gas on that, the border militia guys? Because I could not get enough migrants to come forward to tell me those stories. I was ready to drop a bigger hammer on those guys, but we couldn't get to them. ICE was keeping the ones they had away from us. And then the families that were aware of some of that traffic, they were so afraid that they probably didn't believe that they had a Mexican-American attorney general in their backyard, because the stories seemed so far apart. But I was ready to do more for those communities, but we just couldn't get enough more evidence of people to step forward. So I think that and our local media doesn't always cover the migrant stories or the immigrant things that the things the AG's office does on a national level. They get, like the New Mexico press. So the other thing I did was I sued Trump when he was trying to cut off the census count. So INS, they got to process your immigration status, but that's it. But the other law on the other side is that the Department of Commerce has to count all of you, so we can know how much Chancellor Arvizo gets money to get your school, these programs, the doctors, the clinics, I think you guys have domestic violence shelters down there that need help. So we need all of you counted, but a lot of our Latino communities don't want to get counted. So Trump was trying to make it more oppressive because he wants that count down so that our region gets less funding. So I sued and we won. We won on suing the Department of Commerce that they just need to count our citizens and our non-citizens, but don't share that data with the immigration, and we won on that. But those are things that your newspapers and your media we should have been like celebrating like it's Independence Day. But those stories get lost. So these kind of forums are great for me to come give you an update that we've probably had, I don't know, 5 to 10 legal victories in the last 4 or 5 years that go directly to those communities that are very shy and are distrustful of the legal system. I'll shut up, Cynthia.
Thank you, Attorney General Valderas, for all of your time. Really, we truly, truly appreciate it. And you sharing with us this information that typically doesn't reach the public audience. We will definitely invite you to NMSU. There are many students that would love to hear from you and to learn of the good work and the advocacy work that you're doing for all of us. So thank you so very much for your time. I'm going to go ahead now and thank you and do an applause like this. I hope that will count for all of us that are logged on right now, for Martha and I, as I transition over to Martha so she can go ahead and close us out for the evening. Thank you so much.
Martha, thank you, Chancellor.
Thank you, Attorney General. We really, really appreciate your participation. Your words are very inspirational to all of us. So thank you. I just want to add my thanks to the others as well. Thanks.
Thank you once again to everyone who joined us this evening. We invite you back tomorrow and the rest of the week for a series of panels. Tomorrow night, we have the history of braceros and farm worker struggles at the borderlands. Tuesday, we have legal issues affecting farm workers in West Texas and Southern New Mexico. On Wednesday, we'll be hearing from a panel that will discuss farm workers and public education, K through 20, I apologize. And on Thursday, we'll have a panel that will cover health disparities, food, and financial insecurities for farm workers. We will be inviting farm worker families to join us that evening. On Friday, we wrap up our symposium with a film titled Hailing Caesar, followed by a Q&A with filmmaker Eduardo Chavez, Cesar Chavez's grandson. We leave you now with, before we leave you with the video, I want to invite you again to visit the J. Paul Taylor website and print out your template of a butterfly and send a message, decorate it, send it to us, and write a message so that we can share it with the farm worker community. I will leave you with a formal video invitation from the Camp Student Council to participate in this project. Once again, buenas noches y gracias.